Welcome, everybody, to episode 38 of the CornerBlue. We're finally coming out of the caves where we went to hide after the Mexico game. So sorry, the light just barely came out, so that's why I'm out. Got my sweater on. Ul's got his sweater on, and we're just going to break down the last couple of games for La Azul. But before then, just wanted to say thanks to everybody for tuning in yet again. Obviously, thanks to Ul for being here. I know you've been busy as well. But yeah, if you want, comment on our stuff, let us know. Are you still dealing with the aftermath of the Mexico game? How did you cope with it, especially for those that watched it with Mexican relatives or, you know, your family's mixed? How do you navigate that whole situation? Did you have to stop talking to certain people in your family for a couple of weeks, or have you resumed your relationships? But in any case, like we all know, things didn't necessarily favor El Salvador in the last qualifying window. Unfortunately, you know, we couldn't get the result versus Costa Rica away. And then at home, things didn't necessarily go well against Mexico. Although, you know, at least things went well against Panama. Hugo, now that time has passed, how have you digested the last couple of results?
Well, it's a little bit of a roller coaster. On one hand, you know, I'm glad we got the results against Panama, a rival that is not easy, although historically, you know, we always beaten them at home. But, you know, going into the game, there was all the comments from some Panamanian media that
the pundits.
Yeah. I didn't really understand the comments about. I mean, they're not the United States or Mexico, which I understand. A journalist from Mexico or the United States saying something along the lines of what this guy said will probably make
Honduras,
sense.
You know, Papa Honduras.
Yeah, but not necessarily. But from Panama, I was like, seriously? So when was the last time you beat us at home? Anyways, I'm glad we got that result, and you know that 1-0 victory against Panama kept us alive. You know, we're still in the fight. I mean, the other results, what can I say? I mean, it's tough, right? You never want to lose against Mexico. You never want to lose any game. But we knew going into that game that they're always tough matches. We already have a pretty young team to begin with, and losing a lot of our key players, especially in our back line. I mean, no excuse, you know, like Hugo Perez said, it's not an excuse. As a national team, you have to be prepared, and all players have to be prepared and be ready for the situations. But you have a starting 11. That's a fact. You have a starting back line, and that's a fact. And then I think that we have to give credit to players like Vigil, who I think stepped into the plate, and they did a pretty good job, especially in the first couple of matches. But then, you know, 3 games in a week, you know, it takes a toll on the body, and playing the last game against the toughest rival in the region, you know, we suffered, and there's no excuse. I mean, I mean, I don't even want to say that we produced one goal opportunity. I mean, there was one shot from Alex Larin that was like a meter away from the post, and that's about it. So obviously, lots to work on, but it's a young team, and those are experiences that they need to live and basically take that and grow from that and learn. And there are players, and I mean, it's been a while since we've done a podcast, so I probably said this, but in my opinion, I think Enrico Hernandez or Enrico Dueñas, I think he stepped up to the next level. I think he showed a lot of growth in his game. Perhaps scoring that goal against Panama gave him a boost of confidence, but you know, for a 20-year-old, he seemed very active even against Mexico. player who always asked for the ball, who always made the runs. I see him more and more taking leadership in this team, and he's 20. So to me, that and Vigil and Dominguez and the way they play when they, the first two games at least, it gave us some confidence that, we have some backup for when our starters are not ready. And then in terms of Jacobo, I mean, like I said, I don't know what the day-to-day is. The coaches know that, and
or what matchup they were looking forward to,
Right. And one thing that I thought about it to myself, and I just heard Hugo Perez saying this a couple of days ago, that Jacobo has some experience in the CONCACAF Champions League playing against Mexican teams. And perhaps that gave him, the lead
over Claros.
Over Claros, who, by the way, Lisandro Claros, I thought he just went in there and he did his job and he did really well.
Great debut.
He did really well. So
congratulations to him too, because he it seems like some of the external factors due to his migratory status had kept him from making his debut, whether in a friendly or even any match played in the U.S. in the Gold Cup. Well, one thing that I wanted to say really quick about Jacobo is, from the outside, without too much context, it just seemed like a poor choice. Just because the guy did not look game fit, just at a superficial level visually, he didn't seem game fit. He seemed really flat-footed during the whole match, and unfortunately, it wasn't one of those Mexico El Salvador where El Salvador gets there and it's like they've had the tune-up, they're primed, and they're basically close to a peak performance level. Unfortunately, this time around, like also with the previous time around too with the Primi, there were other factors that took away from El Salvador fielding its top 11. Just to draw some parallels. With the Primi, there were teams or players that were left off the team due to some internal problems that basically the federation was like, you know what, you guys are out. So Primi had to field a B team and Mexico won 3-1. This time around, almost had that kind of sin sabor, I guess you could say, in the sense that column that we've been talking about in previous episodes of the two center backs, Narciso playing in front of them and just making that order in the midfield to play out. They had to go to plan C and D for that match. Narciso, unfortunately, going out with the red card against Costa Rica in a move that Hugo Perez later on said, you know what, I think I might have made a mistake in putting him in that second half against Costa Rica. Maybe I should have left him for Mexico. And it's stuff that happens. I think more than anything, we're seeing growing pains for the players themselves, also for the coaching staff, because people are still getting these games under their belt. And that's why I want to make emphasis that going into this match, I didn't have that feeling that I've had in others where it's like, the team is fine-tuned, it's ready. Like, this is the matches that you play for, it was like, the timing is just a little off, and it came across because Mexico played with a B team and walked all over us, essentially, in my opinion. You could see that dominance, we didn't get those shots on goal, and that says everything to me. How about that midfield? I honestly would have liked to see a Puñed or Martinez instead of Portillo, especially with the high profile match with the lot on the line. I don't know, what were your thoughts on that decision?
Yeah. I thought Martinez, obviously I scouted him for a while. I thought against Costa Rica, tough match for him, playing against his other country.
Yeah, a lot of distractions.
Playing possibly against other players that he plays with in the league and perhaps even in the national team, I thought he was doing a really good job. I was surprised about the sub, and again, but I'm not going to speak to that. It's never been my style, even when I was not involved in any official level. Because again, the coaches are the ones living with the players the day to day, the practices, and they see what they see, and they also make mistakes sometimes, and that's for them to analyze later and decide. But yes, I would have liked to see Martinez more. I personally thought Martinez should have been the starter against Mexico, for his experience. Cabrita, Portillo, and Martinez, I think, have very similar styles, but Martinez plays at a higher level of league, whether we like it or not. Whether people say there's not a big difference between the Costa Rican league and the Salvadorian league, just look at the amount of players Costa Rica, the local league, exports and how many we export. That tells you everything.
Or how far they get in the CONCACAF tournament as well.
Right. I think he's used to playing at a faster pace. He covers a lot of space. Anyways, but hopefully he gets his opportunity. But I think he's a very disciplined player in that position. I would like to see him there. And yeah, I mean, I think it's positive that Punjet, came back after being away for a while, and that he's getting to learn the style. With this coach is obviously different than what he's been involved before in the past. So again, hopefully they continue getting called and taking advantage of the minutes that they get. I think that's the way it should be for every player. I think Hugo Perez has shown to be a coach who gives you an opportunity. If you get in there and then you perform, you're going to start, you're going to get more minutes, and he does give you some time to adapt. And we've seen that with Enrique Hernandez, who did the first couple of call-ups, he was a sub, and now it seems like he's starter. I mean, he played the whole game against Costa Rica, and he played the whole game against Mexico, scored the winning goal against Panama, and was subbed against Panama. So yeah, I hope those players continue getting called. But yes, I mean, of course, playing against players like the Mexican players with the experience that they have, a lot of them playing in Europe, or like Moreno, he's closer to the end of his career, but he's built a career in Europe, in the Netherlands, in Spain, and I perhaps more experienced players like Punyet in there could have worked better, but that's a thing of the past. But yes, I agree with you, Andres, that it wasn't one of those El Salvador Mexico matches that we have been watching that we've been seeing in the last years. But we are in a very, very different and unique situation compared to the past, where in the past it has been, we have the oldest, most experienced players in that team. The only focus is that qualifier. And in this occasion, we know that although we are competing and we want to qualify to Qatar, the goal is different. The goal is 2026, and giving those players these opportunities to play these games, it's going to pay off for the 2026 qualifiers, I think.
You can't just put in players down the line. You have to start bringing them to the mix, as we've seen the coaching staff do. Just in my take, there's certain situations where it's okay to see if they sink or swim. But in my point of view, you got to respect Mexico El Salvador, especially when the eliminatoria is still kind of on the line, in the sense that we're scrambling for points. And it's just my take, obviously. I would have liked to see just stronger pillars in that middle, considering that we were playing with third stringers in the, as center backs, considering the context of how the whole situation with the center backs was playing out. I think it would have been the perfect moment to just put some anchors in the mid and compensate a little bit, just some experience, some cool-headedness, because throughout the Hugo Perez process, there have hardly been moments where I've been anxious or I haven't trusted what was going to go on, because that's something that for me is very common watching La Selecta throughout the years, that there's almost this unpredictability of when things can break down, when something wrong can happen that will determine the outcome of the match. It just is what it is. That's just part of following a Salvador. However, since Hugo Perez took the helm, that feeling for the most part had gone away, especially during the Gold Cup, where you would see a reaction to certain situations within the match where the team wouldn't give up, wouldn't just park the bus and just let the goals come and, try and walk off con la frente en alto, as always said. So it was surprising to see kind of like a relapse, I would say, where there's certain plays that you're like, you're not supposed to do that, pulling a guy right outside the box or making late contact on a player that exposes you and the team. That's something that seemed to fall apart against Mexico. Again, this didn't happen to me, or I didn't notice it, versus Panama, which was a pretty consistent game. The game against Costa Rica, albeit I had to watch it delayed, but those first 20, 35 minutes were what I think Hugo Perez wants this team to do. And that just didn't come across in Mexico because of, all the question marks. And it was like watching the Selecta of old, if you don't know when something is going to happen, to just kind of set the tone and the outcome of the game. And that's what we saw. Is just, I feel, some mistakes that totally could have been prevented. I think people got caught flat-footed or almost scared up to a point, the anxiety of, I can't be the guy to let this happen through or make that mistake. And unfortunately, those fouls, those cards went against us. That one PK that just came up into my mind against Costa Rica, there was contact, just enough that without VAR, you could totally sell something. And you see Mario Gonzalez like touch the guy's waist and then pull back, kind of like a check swing in baseball. If you would have just done that slightly earlier and just let the guy dive, it would have been a PK. But in any case, hindsight's always 2020. I think moving forward, though, if we can keep people healthy. I know Armando Moreno just went down for the rest of his season, and we wish him a quick recovery, but he's going to be missing out on the next window, unfortunately. But if we can keep people healthy, and I think be a little more selective of those moments that you're going to give the youngsters to sink and swim, just to keep this thing going, because you want these significant games to keep happening, so you can keep that pressure on the player to develop too. Because if we get eliminated, let's say by the next window, the marquee level of those matches goes down. And I don't know, I think it'd be better in general to keep the pressure up. Okay, we're still in this, and be selective of those slots or those openings to the youngsters to see if they sink or swim. But if you have something that can kind of stop the bleeding a little bit, especially since we're down on points, I would like to see that a little bit more.
Yeah, two key matches coming up against Jamaica and Panama, and we win those games, we're back. We're still in. I mean, that's the beauty of this sport, that especially given the current
format
standings, we're not that far from the third spot and
Or
or
fourth, the
or
repechaje.
fourth. So I mean, I think that the players should be very clear on that. That a win at home against Jamaica, would be crucial, would be big for us. I know that we're not going to be able to have fans in the back of the goals. Hopefully, it doesn't go beyond that. The fans are important, although they're not the ones who play, but they're important. I think it helps players with their energy and their momentum, and ask any player, and they prefer to play with fans than no fans. And I'm really looking forward to those talks that I've heard about potentially the team having a camp, like a pretty extended camp in January for those games, because one of the key factors to observe is that when the national team played its best under Hugo Perez was the last Gold
Over
Cup
the summer, yeah.
after the team had been working together for 6 weeks.
Which is a luxury for a national team.
It's a luxury for a national team, but it's doable. And if we manage to stay alive in the upcoming window, I think it'll be important to make that camp happen. And a lot of people may say, well, Uruguay doesn't have microciclos, or Brazil doesn't have microciclos, or Italy doesn't have microciclos. Yes, but just hear who you're talking about. They're players playing the top leagues in the world. That's not the case for us. And that's where the microciclos take importance, because the way the players work in the national team is very different than the way they work in their local clubs. Whether some people get upset or not, it's different. It's the pace of the league is very different than the way you're expected to play in the international level. And that's why we can compare ourselves to those other nations. And because I've seen some, criticism about the microciclos and why is Hugo Perez requesting them when all these other nations don't do that? Yes, again, I'm not going to repeat it, but just all we have to see is where those players that make up those national teams come from.
It's all about player development, the leagues that they're playing, the rhythm that they're in, team chemistry as well. And I feel like a lot of bigger countries that have more developed national team programs, since these players have been exposed to different either youth teams or national teams in their career, they're used to coming together and learning a system or playing off of each other in a way that our players, haven't had necessarily that experience of multiple national teams, a different cast coming in every single time and just keeping that one concept, that one style of play. Because we've had to see just the transition of a lot of players when they get to the national team, like we talked with Jerson, just that crash course. We don't have that luxury. So I think that's what gets compensated with these microciclos, and that's why they're so beneficial. And kind of piggybacking on that idea, there were friendly matches that have been announced, right, Uwe, before the end of the year?
Well, confirm is Bolivia.
Okay.
That's the confirmed one, and the rest we have to wait for confirmation.
Which obviously would be a plus. I think these would be the matches that you bring in those youngsters, the ones that need to sink or swim at a men's national team level for these friendlies. This is the perfect time to do it. Obviously, you want to give your starters, if you can call them up for the FIFA match date, you bring them in. But I think this is the ideal place where you throw in the youngsters. In my mind, one thing that keeps coming up is, oh man, I wish we were still in the quadrangular phase of what used to be the hexagonal, where you have maybe one or two decent teams that are going to possibly be in the hexagonal, and then you have one or two lackluster, smaller, weaker teams. But those matches are just so important for just like this buildup or like the development of your national team, where each stage is incrementally more difficult. And I think there's just been a huge gap or difference between this octagonal and the previous qualifying round. And obviously that's just due to CONCACAF and its amazing creativity. But I feel like that quadrangular was almost like this perfect warm up, tuning up to ultimately the exigencias that the hexagonal used to have, and that now we have with the octagonal. So I think we're going to end it soon. We've been at this for like, almost 30 minutes now. But before we come back with the next window of matches, we'll see if we can get some guests on just to break down kind of what the experiences have been for players with this new generation, this new process that's going on, and especially just I'd like to know what it's been like the last couple of match days at Cusca, coming back from COVID, the excitement that's gone along with it. Obviously, we've seen so much positive, but then, there is some of the negative, and we have to wait to see what happens with FIFA in terms of that. But is there anything else you want to mention, Ugo?
No, that's it. Well, national teams, as people know, are starting to work with the youth now. The youth 18s and the U15s, I believe, are the two groups right now. The U18s are going to be the upcoming U20. Those are players born in 2005, 2004, 2003, and 2004, I believe.
Yeah, so there were tryouts recently this last week.
Yeah.
That is something positive. I mean, obviously there were people even still criticizing that, which it doesn't make much sense. I'm sorry. Like, if you announce stuff online, word will spread. That's just how things are nowadays. And we also are not on the ground in the areas where these tryouts are held. So we don't know how much word of mouth was used to get kids out there, but kids indeed were there. The tryouts have been occurring, and it's something important. So just quick reminder. So November 12th, El Salvador plays Jamaica, 7 p.m. at home, followed by El Salvador versus Panama in the Rommel, which should be interesting considering, all the hype, as we mentioned, that the Panamanian pundits, not all of them, obviously, but there were a few Panamanian pundits that got their 15 seconds of fame. And we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. I like the head-to-head with Panama. Obviously, that's, I think, one thing that we can look forward to is, fortunately and consistently, we've been able to get results at home and away. Jamaica, on the other hand, they've seemed to start turning things around now that they've been able to incorporate some of their foreign-based players that weren't able to play in the previous windows. Do you know anything about that, Uwe?
No, I mean, they have about 12 players, 12, 14 players that are English-born players. It takes time, and we've seen they were struggling. So, I mean, they weren't able to use some of those players in the first couple of games due to COVID restrictions. But even when they had them all, they still were having poor results. But recently they beat Honduras, and it seems that they're going to be pretty, in a good moment with momentum for them. And we always had a hard time with their physicality at home, away, but we have to get those 3 points at home. I mean, there's just there's no way around it. We have to. Yeah, we have to win. They are I think they're in the last place or seventh place.
Honduras is last place.
Honduras, okay. So I mean, now Jamaica, and Panama, and Honduras are direct rivals. So we can't miss any points against them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting.
Really quickly, in first place is Mexico with 14 points, followed by the U.S. with 11. Canada is third with 10 points right behind them. Fourth place, the final seed for the repechaje, is Panama with 8. followed by Costa Rica in the number 5 spot with 6 points. And then in 6th place is Jamaica with 5 points. They have a 1 goal better differential than us. That's why they have that 6th spot, followed by El Salvador with 5 points, 5 goals against. And in the 8th spot is Honduras, which unfortunately for them, the last result kind of was like that last the last string of hay on the camel's back or whatever the saying is, and Coito was sacked. So they're gonna have an interesting time, making that transition under Bolillo Gomez and trying to see if they can get some points. I think it's to our advantage that they have dropped so many points, because I thought Honduras looked pretty strong heading into Octagonal. And things just didn't work out for them. Just looking at this table, I think we have to get points against Panama, Costa Rica, and Jamaica. Like that's it. That's basically the key. Obviously, you want to make a stand against Canada at home later on, and we've already played Mexico and the USA. But if you were to tell me we get a 0-0 draw against the US at home, I'd be happy with that. I feel like a loss against Mexico, like it or not, is kind of within the budget of the points. I think at this point, the biggest disappointment result-wise at home was that tie with Honduras, which with how bad they've been playing and how bad we played, it would have been ideal to get that win at home. Well, I think we're going to end it with that. We'd like to thank you once again for joining us, because remember, this is that spot for all you Salvies that, you kind of want to break things down without getting too emotional, pissed off, because it's easy for us. It's something that ticks us off anytime our team doesn't have a good result. Like, I didn't text Uo for days, dude. I just didn't want to, that's why. No, I'm just kidding. No. But I mean, it affects us in different ways, obviously, and you want to see that success on the pitch. I feel like it's pretty easy for sports fans across the board, any nationality, any sport, that when things look bad, people want to look and find a scapegoat, blame somebody, put someone under the magnifying glass. And when things are going all right, everyone's happy and lovey-dovey and everything's perfect. And we're trying to keep that honesty, whether things are going well or poorly. And I think at this point, it's still transition mode, still early. We're going to see those growing pains, but hopefully we see that maturity come into play, especially after that camp that Hugo mentioned that is in the works. I think that would be the ideal situation in trying to make that final push in the last couple of matches. But until then, just remember, this is the Corner Blue. So subscribe, tell your friends, tell your tia. Thanksgiving is coming up for those in the US and Canada, right? Yeah, because gotta mention that they celebrate Thanksgiving out there. So there's gonna be time to talk, and you can reference us or listen to us and get those tidbits so you can keep up with the family and be like, no. Here's some stat, or here's some information that I learned from War Varado. And then you can stay in the conversation. And in any case, bundle up, people, because it's getting cold in most parts of the world that are north of the equator. It's starting to get cold up here in Northern Cali. Hopefully I don't get a cold anytime soon. But again, thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time. All right.